So episode 5 of WandaVision just dropped on Disney+. We are over halfway through the season now, and while the first few episodes took their time building the intrigue, these last two episodes have kind of played catch up on building the story and the context. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies, TV, and Marvel way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know, what did you think about this week's episode and all the big, gigantic twists, reveals? What are kind of your theories as to what is going on with all of this? And it says spoilers in the title, so you don't need to put spoiler warnings. Go ahead and discuss all of it. If you're kind of new to my spoiler reviews for these week-to-week episodes, I kick it off with my general thoughts on the episode and show thus far. Then I do kind of a walkthrough of the whole episode, my thoughts on all the little things that happened and whatever insights I have. Then I have some closing thoughts. If you want to skip ahead, I will have chapter markers down below so you can kind of get to the specific moments that you would like to hear about. With that said, let's get started with my general impressions. And for me, this is the first episode where it feels like the show in its proper form. And what I mean by that is that the first 3 episodes are designed around this gimmick of we're in a sitcom and we don't know why. And there's little things hinting at the fact that things aren't right here. But obviously, Wanda and Vision aren't in a 1950s sitcom, so there's that intrigue, but it's not really moving forward. We don't know the context. Last week's episode was 100% context. It didn't really move anything forward. It was 100% exposition, enjoyable exposition I wanted, but it existed for the purpose of giving us context for these 3 episodes that were like, what on earth is going on? So this is the first one where it feels like the story is moving forward. We're getting big reveals about what is going on with each of these characters and learning a lot of details, while at the same time, there's a bunch of questions that still exist as to what is going on. As I mentioned last week, it's difficult for me to kind of give some sort of overall rating or evaluation of the show because the whole thing is built around the payoff to the answer of all these mysteries and the intrigue that it's building. And that will kind of determine what do I think about this thing as a whole. It's a bit like trying to review a movie based off only watching half of it. Well, you wouldn't do that. You have to see the whole movie to be able to score it. And that's what this particular show feels like. Not every show is like that, but with this one where if you tried to rate it based off the first episode, by the time you get to the 4th one, it kind of reframes everything, turns everything on its head. And so I'm still kind of in this phase of like, man, how do I even process everything that's happening? But here's what I can say. Every episode that they give me, the more I'm like, well, I need the next one right now. Well, I need to see where this is going. I want to know the answers, and it's only building more and more anticipation and excitement. So much so that, every Thursday night I'm rewatching a few episodes, taking notes, setting everything up so I'm ready to go to see the next one. My level of excitement is growing, so that's all positive. I sure hope that this thing pays off properly and has a great finale because my level of excitement is building up in that sort of way that you want it to. And I, of course, trust Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige. They have a phenomenal track record, so I'm sure that it all will pay off. But I'm having the proper reaction as someone that went into this show skeptical, as someone that was a little bit like, what's going on these first 3 episodes? I am getting the right level of like, yeah, I can't wait. What's going to happen? What are they going to do with the next decades of sitcom? I can't wait to see what that's going to be like. All of that, very good things. I just don't know how I would score it, and I wouldn't want to until we get kind of that big final reveal. From there, let's get to our walkthrough, and there is a lot in this episode. This episode is the longest one that we've gotten thus far, and it functions as both kind of our sitcom episode as well as kind of the outside world stuff going on. But inside of the sitcom version of it, you have Vision that keeps he's very curious as to what's going on. So there are a lot of moving parts in this episode. I'm going to try and move as quickly as I can. It kicks off with this little sequence where the twins won't stop crying. So they're trying to do everything they can to try and get them to stop crying. You have this moment where Wanda starts trying to snap her fingers, do her magic tricks to get them to stop, and nothing happens. And she says, "Why won't you do what I want?" Which kind of in that moment, in a normal context, you'd be like, yeah, that's what a mom would say. But Wanda has been able to rewrite the reality inside of these before and rewind and change things. But all of a sudden in this moment, it seems like she did something and it didn't do what she wanted. And this is kind of really establishes kind of the theme, one of the big questions of this episode about control. So at this moment, Agnes walks in the door and she's wearing this kind of ridiculous 80s jumpsuit. And the premise, I guess, of this sitcom would be that she's the wacky, quirky neighbor that shows up to help with the kids from time to time, in the vein of like a who's the boss type situation, except with their quirky neighbor being the person that helps them raise the kids. And so she walks up, and Vision is not like, maybe we should do this. Maybe we shouldn't just surrender this over to you. We need to take care of our own kids. And you can see on Agnes's face, she like has this like, pauses for a moment, like she's a little bit off, and kind of turns to Wanda like, do you want to redo that? Do you want to kind of redo this take? And Vision's like, what is going on here? And then Agnes tries to kind of break out of it, but she's still kind of talking to Wanda like, hey, do you want to do over or something like that? And Wanda kind of shrugs it off, and Vision kind of pulls Wanda aside like, what on earth? What was that? That was weird. That wasn't normal. Wanda's like, yeah, she's so crazy. And Wanda just keeps shrugging off this very odd thing. And this kind of establishes like Vision is now very aware this is not right. This is not the way the world is supposed to be. And Wanda doesn't seem to be accepting the fact that something's weird about this. She's being dishonest with him. Suddenly the kids stop crying. They walk over, look in the cribs like, hey, where'd the kids go? And they look over and the kids have aged up to 5, 6 years old, something like that. And Agnes, who's now sitting in the kitchen, she says, kids, you can't control them no matter how hard you try. So we're just in our opening sequence, and you've had Wanda try and do some magic, and they're like, why won't they do what I want? And then you have Agnes saying, kids, you can't control them no matter how hard you try. That's kind of been the question all along. Who's controlling all of this? What is going on? Is Wanda in control? Is Wanda not in control? This right out of the gate. They want you to be asking, pondering inside your head, is she in control? Because clearly she's not in control as she would like to be. She doesn't seem to want them to age the way somewhat that they're doing this. They're not stopping crying when she's snapping her fingers like she wants them to. So what exactly is going on here? Wanda knows a lot more than we know, but what exactly does that translate to into everything that's kind of going on here? Then, of course, also on Agnes, as I discussed in my previous reviews, clearly she's the one that seems to be disconnected from everything else going on. She's like the big question mark in all of this, because they put up, all along, she's said things that made it seem like she knew a little bit more. She's referenced things like the devil being everywhere. And then last week they put up the pictures on the walls identifying the real names of people. Agnes's pictures on the wall, but they didn't identify who she really was. So it seemed like she's the suspicious one. When was it Herb was repeating that to Vision, like, we're all. Agnes is the one trying to get him to stop, trying to get him to not reveal something is afoot. So she seemed like the anomaly all along. Then this little interaction right here where she's like, do you want me to do that again? Just affirming, well, I don't exactly understand what's going on here, but she is a part of it. Then opening credits, or not, our opening theme song happens. And it just I love these opening theme songs that they keep doing. I actually, like at the beginning of this one, because that intro was so long, I was like, man, I sure hope that we're going to get a theme song. I would hate if we skipped the theme song and then it actually plays and it's pure 80s gold and cheesiness, cringe, all of it. You get these pictures of Vision and family things and as a baby. Amazing stuff that I'm sure will be spread all over Twitter and the internet for quite a while. So then we cut to the outside. Monica is basically recalling her experience being sucked into sitcom world, and she talks about being in pain and there was an agony to it. Clearly not a good experience. And then Darcy, Wu come in, and they're like, hey, down the hall, we got a debrief. Let's get on down there. So head on down to the meeting. Hayworth is leading this meeting with Wu, trying to tell everyone who Wanda is and kind of giving her backstory. And very quickly, you start to realize the two competing ideas of who she is, where Hayworth wants to present her as a radical Hydra terrorist that's a threat to the world. And Wu is like, well, I mean, she was wronged and she made some bad choices, but she also redeemed herself. The Avengers trusted her. And immediately you just see the conflict between the two of them. Like, they are not on the same page. And that pretty clearly is going to be a tension that runs throughout the rest of the season, where it seems like Hayworth knows more than we know. He has his own motives. There's something involving him that ties to other things. He is not as pure of a higher up as he seemed in the previous episode. One of the things I said I liked about the introduction to his character is that they didn't immediately present him as this really difficult guy that's arrogant, that a lot of kind of the government bureaucrats in the world of the MCU kind of all fit into the same type. And he wasn't that. And so Monica had kind of a back and forth with him, but it was respectful. We get here, it feels a little bit like he's moving quickly into the Thunderbolt Ross government bureaucrat jerk, or corrupt bureaucrat, perhaps. Who knows where this is going? But it seems like he's not the guy that he was presented before. We'll see where it's going. I don't like that all of these types of guys all turn out to be these types of guys. As soon as he's introduced as the male guy that's over the organization, you just know, like, he's going to be this jerk. That's, okay, here we're heading down this path once again. We'll see where it goes. But so he basically informs them that 9 days ago, Wanda broke into Sword where Vision's dead body was being held, and she stole it and kind of took it to do her deal. And keep in mind, once give the context on this, is where sometimes the timeline on all this gets a little bit like you have to stop and think about this. To Wanda, Vision died 1 month ago. Vision died 1 month ago for her because she got blipped. She got wiped out and then came back. And so then, 9 days ago would have been 3 weeks after the events of Infinity War. That's in her mind what's kind of going on here. To the guys at Sword, they've had Vision's body for 5 years. He died 5 years ago, 5 years and 1 month ago with Infinity War, and they've just been housing this dead corpse. So keep kind of keeping some of that in mind. We're like, I keep running my mind like, yeah, we're 1 month after Infinity War. Like, no. For half the people in this show, we are 1 month after Infinity War. And for the other half, we are 5 years and 1 month after Infinity War. But so 9 days ago from this show, or from this episode, Wanda broke in, stole his body, and thus seems to have created this reality. And so then they bring up the question of like, wait, how do you bring Vision back to life without the Mind Stone? Like that, how does she have the power to do that? That doesn't seem to be within the realm of what we know to her to have been able to do before. But once again, raising this question of, okay, what's really going on here? Wanda is very powerful, but she's not that powerful. She's not create life powerful. So what is going on that's amplifying her powers, that's working with her, kind of these pieces? What is it? And who is Agnes that she kind of ties into all of this? So we go back into our sitcom, and the twins basically have found a puppy. They're hiding it in the sink. Wanda's like, hey, kids, what's going on here? And reveals they've got a dog. Vision shows up. They're trying to debate what should they do with this dog that they've found. And right as they're debating this, Agnes just kind of walks in the door, and Vision's like, wait a minute. Why did she just happen to show up right at this moment where we needed to show up? And Wanda raises her hand, creates a collar to put on the dog right in front of Agnes. And Vision's like, wait, what? Why did you do magic in front of them? So pulls her aside once again, like, what's going on here? Like, we said we're going to keep this a quick secret. We're not going to let people see this. And Wanda's like, it doesn't matter. She didn't even notice that our kids aged up. So what's the big deal? He's like, what? Right. What, doesn't that strike you as odd? She didn't get what is going on here that you don't seem to care about? any of these odd things that are happening here, and their kids start to notice that they're fighting, and so they turn around like, we've decided that you can't have a dog until you're 10. And they just go age up to 10, and they're like, well, golly, well, I guess they get to have a dog now. And so you can kind of see the world of all of this. It's crumbling. The rules that they were following in the first 3 episodes, they're not following. In particular, Wanda, she's not playing by her own rules. Vision is very well aware of this. The universe doesn't seem to be playing by the same rules, and it seems to be kind of like fluctuating much faster than before. So back on the outside, they're trying to decide or figure out what to do next. How do they get someone inside? Monica wants to go in to try and fix things. Darcy labels this thing the Hex, which they have some fun with the name. And they start just once again debating like how much power does Wanda have, and how much power would it require to create something this large and control it all at the same time? It doesn't seem like she'd have that power. And they mentioned that Wanda almost beat Thanos all by herself and no one else could do that. And then Darcy brings up Captain Marvel, in which case Monica's like, we're not talking about her. Interesting little detail, because the thing we know about Monica from before this show was back 25 years ago that Captain Marvel, obviously a superhero that she knows, has connections to. And then even in last week's episode, they mentioned allies from space showing up. And so there seems to be some reason that she's mad about Captain Marvel. And given that everything that's gone down in the last 5 years with the blip, and that Captain Marvel didn't show up until after all that happened, and seems like there could be some hurt feelings from some of that. Don't know all of what's going on here, but clearly she's not in the best of relationships with Captain Marvel at the moment, which is interesting. It's like a subtle mystery, and if you're just watching it, you might not even realize that if you're kind of the more casual fan. So it's a nice little detail. And even if you know who these characters are, you can easily overlook this simple line of dialogue about that. But then what ends up happening is they kind of reveal that this isn't a hallucination. This is altered reality. And they kind of show this through Monica's bulletproof vest is now turned into bulletproof pants. And so she's changing what exists into this thing. And they propose this idea of like, what if we sent something in that doesn't need to be changed and use the technology of the decade so it doesn't need to be warped to that time period. Cuts to a sequence with Vision at his job again, the same job from the first episode, except now they're getting these brand new personal computer things, which they crack a couple jokes about it, and then they receive an electronic mail, and it's from Sword talking about the Wanda Maximoff anomaly, and then everyone in the room starts like reading the email out loud, even though they're not like in creepy fashion. And Vision is like freaking out, like, what on earth is going on here? And it ends, and everyone starts laughing as if it's a punchline from a joke inside of the sitcom. And Vision's like, I gotta figure out what's going on here. So he uses his magic powers, pops Norm out of it.
Please help me. What day is it?
And Norm is like, I'm in pain. I'm in agony. Get me out of here. You have to stop her. I got to call my family. And it's like, he like immediately goes from, hey, how am I going to, do I need a stamp to send an electronic mail to, get me out of here instantly. And it's like very unsettling when you switch back and forth to it. Then Vision goes, boop, puts him back into his trance. And he is concerned that something is afoot here. Back at the house, the kids are playing with the dog and kind of normal sitcom stuff. And then the kids are like, why is Dad at work? And they're like, oh, he just need to get some work done. They're like, yeah, but it's Saturday. And she's like, well, he just needed a little bit of space. They're like, right, but it's not Monday. And she's like, yeah, it's Monday. Like, no, it's Saturday. Why is Dad at work on a Saturday? And it's like a subtle detail, but once again, it's those details of like the logic of the show isn't fitting. And even the characters on the show, these kids are noticing like this is not right. And in a previous scene, they'd made it clear like these are real kids. These aren't like kidnapped kids. They're real kids. What exactly that means, we don't know. But they're realizing this world doesn't add up. Something is not quite right here. And so she's trying to talk this off. So it kind of turns into one of these moral of the story moments that used to be at the end of sitcoms of the 80s, early 90s. So she sits down with the kids and like just because we're having a fight doesn't mean don't love each other. It's just having a nice one of these moments and talking about how they disagree, but they still want what's best. And then outside they hear a noise. Something's not quite right. Walk up to the door, open the door, and the dog gets out, which will be important in just a moment. They step outside, and Sword has flown in an 80s drone. Monica wants to use the drone to talk to Wanda, but Hayworth has a different idea in mind, so decides to shoot a missile at her or something like that, which Monica did not know about and was not too happy about. And one person who really did not like this was Wanda, and so she decides to exit, walks outside of the barrier to confront them about shooting a missile at her, which understandable. I don't want a missile shot at me either. And it's kind of an interesting little section because it's tough to read what on earth is going on exactly with Wanda, which of course is the premise of this entire show, like what on earth is going on with Wanda. But she walks outside and she's in angry Scarlet Witch mode. I mean, she's in her Avengers suit, balls of energy in her hands, and like, what are you guys messing with my world? And they're like, you took a city hostage. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, but she look at like, you guys are the one with guns. I'm like, okay, that logic doesn't follow, Wanda. So like at this moment, it kind of waiting, like when it's unclear exactly how much Wanda is fully in control of all what's going on and like of herself, because there's such a disconnect in her logic to where they're like, you just kidnapped thousands of people. She's like, yeah, but you guys have guns, which they do have guns, but you kidnapped thousands of people. And Monica kind of walks up and tries to reason with her a little bit, kind of talking with her, being like, Wanda, like, you let me in, made me a character, and you trusted me to give birth to your kids. So, like, we're on, like, I want the best for you. You have enough ability to read my mind to know that. So, trust me when I say, like, you kidnapped all of these people, and what do you want? She goes, I have what I want. This is my home. Stop trying to violate my home. I guess the phrase she says is, I have what I want, and no one will ever take it from me again. And that seems to be the big idea. She does not want to lose anyone else. She lost her parents, she lost her brother, and then she lost Vision. After losing her whole biological family, finds Vision. That's going to be her new family, and then that's taken from her. And so her kind of final move is she decides to go back in and she controls the people's minds and gets them to turn their guns on Hayworth, and she walks into the field. So then we get this week's commercial, and it's for paper towels, Lagos brand paper towels. And as by now you probably picked up on, if you're watching videos like this, you've probably seen 1,000 people explaining this. Each of these commercials, the brand is named after some trauma from her past. Those defining outside forces that kind of led her to be who she is, that's who it is. So week 1, Stark toaster. Stark, responsible for the weapons that killed her parents. Week 2, Strucker watch. Strucker's the Hydra agent that experimented on her. We saw him in Age of Ultron. He's the one that experimented. He had to give her powers. Week 3, Hydra soap. Hydra, obviously evil. Strucker worked for Hydra. Bad news. This one, it's Lagos. It's the building. It's from Civil War. At the beginning, where that whole sequence takes place, where through her trying to stop a bomb from blowing up a crowd of people, she leads to her blowing up a crowd of people. In her effort to save it, she failed and other people died instead. And so it's now referencing that incident to where thing that she was involved in that caused the destruction of the Avengers, that eventually led to the weakening of the Avengers as a force to save the Earth, that created a window for Thanos to show up and get all the Infinity Stones and kill Mr. Vision. That potentially might not have happened had the Avengers been unified for the years leading up to that. And of course, if you're responsible for hundreds of people dying, that's probably also a bit of a downer. So that's what this one in the commercial ties to. Cut back into our sitcom, and Wanda and the kids are looking for the dog. As I mentioned before, the dog ran out when they opened the door, so they're trying to find it. The mailman walks up to her, and they're like, hey, we're looking for the dog. And the thing she says is, the dog won't get far. Your mom won't let him. once again, subtle language of something that doesn't feel terribly detached from what someone would say in a sitcom like this, except what he's saying in the context of an episode whose whole theme is control. Your mom won't let him. So Wanda, who thinks she has control of the whole thing, thought she had control of this whole thing, and then suddenly, even the mailman's saying, your mom won't let that happen. And then they walk up, and Agnes is holding the dog, and it's all wrapped up, and I guess it ate some of her plants or something that ended up killing the dog. And so they're obviously very bummed out about this. And then she sees the kids are really distraught. She tells them, don't age out of this. Don't try to run away and escape your pain. In every line of everything she says right here, clearly references to what she is doing or did do, leading to the context that is this show. All of it has this dual meaning, and you can start to see just a little bit of on her face. Like, don't age out of this. You can't just run from your pain. You can't just escape your pain. You have to deal with it. Don't just age out of this. And then they say, like, hey, can you bring him back? Because you can bring back the dead. And what? What do you mean? I can't do that. And like, yeah, you can bring back the dead. She's like, no, I mean, you have to like deal with your pain and accept losses and move on. And like, she's saying all this stuff that you're like the exact opposite of what she seems to be doing, seems to have happened. She's teaching her kids all of this stuff, and maybe has some awareness of it. It's really unclear. Like, she has these moments where she makes these faces where you think that's her realizing that she's really in the wrong here. And then Vision walks up and realizes that the dog is dead and, wants to comfort his kids. And then it cuts back to their house. And they're in the kitchen, and Vision confronts her about rewriting reality. She kind of walks up to her like, hey, I talked to Norm at the office. I use my powers to take off the brain rewiring that you've been doing. And you can't do this. You can't control people like this. She's like, what? What are you talking about? And she keeps playing as if she doesn't know what he's talking about. And things just start escalating pretty quickly from there as he says, you can't control me like you can control them. And then Wanda says, can't I? Right off the bat. Once again, what is this whole episode about? Control. Who is in control? And is Wanda in control? She still thinks that she's in control. She thinks that she's the one calling the shots, and even says to Vision, can't I? But, as we've seen throughout this episode, early on, she can't get the babies to stop crying. When Agnes screws up her line or whatever happened at the beginning, in previous episodes, it does like that recut thing, and it kind of did a rewind, so Vision wouldn't. When Vision became aware of stuff before, the show rewound to a different moment so that he wouldn't be aware of it. But that didn't happen in this episode. And then the dog dies, and the mailman says, oh, your mom won't let him get away. But then he does end up dying. And now we're here, and Vision says, you can't control me like you control them. She says, can't I? And then it gets the emotion of the next little section gets real weird because the credits start to roll. Like, actually, like old school credits are rolling as they're arguing with the cutesy theme music playing. And it's weird because the emotions of what's on screen don't match. But there are some of these little bicker fights in those types of shows. But this is not one of those bicker fights. This is like Vision is furious as to what exactly is going on. And so they go into the other room and start flying. And he's like shouting at her like, what on earth is going on? I'm confused. She's like, you've never talked to me like this before. He's like, I don't remember before. I don't remember anything before we were here. And I mean, just shouting at her about all of this.
What is outside of Westview?
You don't want to know, I promise you.
You don't get to make that choice for me, Wanda.
She's like, isn't it good enough that you're my husband and we have our kids? Isn't it good? Isn't just the two of us? Isn't this enough? And he's like, why aren't there any other kids here? She's like, no, there's other kids. He's like, no, there's not. Like, I've walked around town and there's no other kids. Other theme of this show, like control is one of them. The mystery of who's behind all of this is one. And then what is the deal with kids? Because go to episode 2, and before she's pregnant with the twins, they're at these meetings, and it's like a cult meeting, like for the children. And it's like, that was a little bit weird. And then, of course, they end up having kids very quickly. And then now we're here, and there's no other kids here. Agnes is saying, like, you can't control kids. How does the mystery behind who's behind all of this tying into who their kids are? What does all of it mean? And I know little. I don't really know the comic origins of their marriage and their kids and everything. I know there's something to it, though. I know I've heard just enough sentences to be like, okay, there's definitely something big up surrounding all of this stuff. So they sit down, and there's a knock at the door. And Wanda says, that wasn't me. And Vision just looks at her like, obviously it was you. What are you talking about? She's like, do you not believe, like, Vision, do you not believe me? He's like, I want nothing more in the world to believe you, but, and he says it in a very Vision way, not the way that I could say it, but like, I can't believe you. All the evidence says I should not believe you because you are lying to me and you're manipulating everyone. And like, you can see, like, she's really upset about this. Like, she's upset that he doesn't like what she's doing, which it's interesting because it's like that's what trying to get a read on exactly what's going on with her is tricky because to some extent she knows what she's doing. We just watched her go outside, but then why is she acting confused that Vision is angry that she's controlling people and warping the world? That she has more sense and humanity than that. So once again, evidence, there's this outside force affiliated, kind of connected to her as to forcing this stuff to happen. So she walks over to the door to check to see that who's at the door. Opens it. Who's there? Evan Peters as Quicksilver. So Quicksilver is her brother, Pietro, and because of the rights to the show or to the character, there's one of those weird anomalies where Quicksilver could appear both in the Fox X-Men movies as well as the Marvel movies. Because Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are both part of the X-Men set of characters, as well as the Avengers. They've been on the Avengers, but then their dad is Magneto, and therefore they're in the X-Men world. Therefore, for a little bit there, we had two different Quicksilvers at the exact same time. And therefore, there's this interesting scenario that can happen now that Disney has purchased Fox. So we get here, and instead of the version of her brother that was in the Marvel Studios version, we get the version from the X-Men universe, which just immediately you go, I wonder if they're going to do anything else with this. Like, is that Elizabeth Olsen has teased a Luke Skywalker level cameo. Evan Peters as Quicksilver is not Luke Skywalker level cameo. Maybe, actors just say things that, she could be meaning this, but this really is not Luke Skywalker level. It's interesting. It's very cool. It's not Luke Skywalker level. So is Michael Fassbender going to show up? Like, where's this headed? What could they do with this? Are we going to get Patrick Stewart as Professor X? Like, there's all these things that could happen to where how do X-Men really get introduced into this universe? Scarlet Witch, Wanda, one of the bridge characters. It's now on the table in a very big way. Now, so what was my response when I saw him on screen? It was actually to get mad because it was spoiled for me. It's part of the consequence of having a large following. But so I had someone DM me like, "Hey man, did you see the leaks? Evan Peters is Quicksilver. He's going to show up soon." Just that DM, I just opened my DMs on it, right there. And then even if that hadn't happened, I had people then that started spamming some of my random videos with multiple accounts just to copy and paste the same thing to make it as difficult as possible for me to delete it. So yeah, thanks universe for that. One person, it was unintentional and they didn't know better. Please be respectful of other people. Don't assume that they know things. It's really not appreciated. I was robbed of a moment because of some of that. But then other people, they're just mean-spirited and they like to spoil things, which is, I don't know, like, if you have fun basically taking something away from other people, I don't understand where you're coming from. Like, the fact that you don't care about spoilers doesn't mean that you're not taking something from someone else. So grow up, people. Anyway, that's where the episode ends. And, Darcy says, wait, was he recast? Like, on the outside, they recognize this is not her actual brother. They're like, what on earth is going on here? Which opens up so many possibilities. Is this just stunt casting? And they did a fun recast for us to wink at the audience? Or did we just open the door of multiverse? Is this the start of multiverse right here? That we kind of knew this. We know this is where everything's happening because we know the title of Doctor Strange 2. And, certainly there's been rumor speculation that that's where all of this is heading. This opens the door for multiverse in big ways. And then obviously this could be the moment. Our first real multiverse moment. So anyway, kind of giving you some final thoughts on the episode. As I mentioned early on, what this show is doing really well is making me get more and more excited. More and more like invested, more and more I just need to know what's going to happen next. And my concern after the first 3 episodes, because I saw the first 3 episodes before anything debuted, that's what they gave to the critics. I saw those first 3 episodes and I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. I'm kind of entertained, but I don't know what's going on. I don't have context. I need to have more to even kind of get my grasp on what's going on here. So as they're giving that to me, like, okay, right, all right, yeah, okay, let's see, right, I want to know even more, and they're starting to like balance out much better the weird gimmick of the sitcom stuff with also here's how this ties into all these bigger things and interesting Marvel stuff. The language that I used early on in my reviews was we have 23 movies in over 10 years that kind of created an expectation of what the MCU is. And the first 3 episodes deliver none of that. And these last 2 episodes haven't really given us what you expect from those ones, which is big sci-fi action. That's or action, however you want to phrase it, comic booky action. That's not what these have been, but they've created the connective tissue. They've built the bridge to where it's something different in the universe, but you can see how it makes sense and it's connected and it fills in gaps in interesting ways and shows you these characters in a new direction and has more potential for what you can do with this universe. Very much I'm enjoying what this show is doing, and it's my there's not another show I'm watching week to week right now, so there's not any competition. But of shows in the last couple of years, I mean, it's this and Mandalorian are the 2 that I've been like, what's going to happen next? No surprise here, because one of the franchises I'm obsessed with, Star Wars and the MCU. So naturally, these are ones that I'm very invested in right now as they're putting. Disney Plus really is going all in on these shows. They feel like something different from normal television. And I think maybe that's kind of a way even to think about it. Like, they describe them as wanting to make these 4-hour movies, 6-hour movies broken up into 6 episodes, 9 episodes, whatever it is for the given shows. And you hear that and you go, is it that? Like, okay, I know you're saying that, but doesn't every TV show want to say that? And people have been saying that a long time. But that's really what these are functioning like. They have a certain level of, obviously production value to them, but also Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen they're movie stars. Paul Bettany has been starring in big movies for 20 years now, and now he's the star of the show, and you feel that. And when we get, a guest cameo, it's someone else that's from movies. And they're just bringing that weight to it. That's pretty cool what they're doing. And it makes you excited for everything else that they're going to do. Because it really is top quality. And if you can do something like WandaVision that's this weird and then tie it in, when they announced 1,000 shows in December at the investors meeting, there's a side to it that was like, okay, they haven't even done one of these, and they've announced 1,000 more of them. I don't know. Like, are they just cranking these things out? What is going on here? And they are just cranking them out, but they're cranking them out with money behind it and high-level talent, which is really cool. So I can't wait till next week to get more answers, to kind of give some of my thoughts as to what I think is going on here. Once again, I don't know the comic booky stuff. I think what happened is that in her grief, Wanda explored some dark options, or someone came to her with some dark options, wanting to ease her pain, is kind of the classic situation of, it was the monkey's paw that was explored in Wonder Woman 1984, that there's always a cost. So someone came to her, she went to someone that could give her what she wanted. She wanted Vision back, and the promise was, yeah, you'll just get your own little pocket universe where you can be happy with him without interrupting the rest of the world. And that wasn't the whole story. There was more to it, and it was a trick. It's someone that wants to use Wanda and her power, or take her out of commission, or is trying to use this to do something. Wanda actively chose to do something she shouldn't do. Steal a dead man's body to bring him back for her purpose of filling a void in her life. But there's something else that's kind of controlling her in another sense. Even in this episode, there's enough things to where people are like, Wanda, there's thousands of people are kidnapped. Wanda, she's teaching her kids the right answers. So it seems like there's some other piece to it to where I think she's not fully in control. She thinks that, you've created a sitcom for myself. But even as you watch these episodes, it seems like she was very confused in the first episode, but she snaps out from time to time. So what does that mean? Is it like she keeps putting herself in a trance, or this person is like intentionally putting her in the trance so she snaps out of it and she rewinds things and goes back? Like, how exactly does that work? I don't know. But I think there's this outside force that's not fully using her. It's giving her what she wants, but they have their own purpose in mind with it as well. I imagine somehow these kids are not going to turn out to be the blessing that kids are supposed to be. These kids are probably in some way tied to whatever this big villain is. It's going to be some horrifying twist at the end to where Vision and I don't know if Vision will be able to join a battle like this in his dead state, but they're probably not going to be. That's not going to be a happy ending, I don't suspect. So there's kind of my little theories as to what's going on. My thoughts on the episode as a whole. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. We'll be back next week and keep talking movies, TV, and Marvel too much.